The Major Spoilers podcast covers news, reviews, and of course, spoilers, and goes into details about the topics discussed. So if you haven't read, listened, or watched the items we talk about, you might want to come back later.
I'm Matthew.
I'm Rodrigo.
And I'm Steven, and you're listening to the Major Spoilers podcast, the podcast for pop culture and comic fans.
In this issue, is Connecting the Dots the new coloring inside the lines? Will Jaime Reyes find out the secret of magic? Can Betty Boop overcome ghosts? And is Wally really fresh? All these answers and more, plus the Kickbutt poll of the week, our analyses, feedback, call, and response, all in the mighty Major Spoilers manner, leading us to ask, have you heard the good news about the Major Spoilers podcast? Because we got literature for you, and it's on the air.
Welcome to issue 696 of the Major Spoilers podcast. Thank you so much for downloading. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for sharing this episode with a friend or friends. I know a lot of you have friends, so why not share it with all of them? It doesn't have to be just one. Share it with all of them. Don't be stingy. I know you like this show and you want to keep it to yourself, but spread the love. You know how else you can spread the love? Patreon.com/Major Spoilers. If you love this show, you want to see it continue, sign up, patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Get access to some cool stuff. A lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, bonus stuff, picture stuff. Stuff. Yeah, there's some stuff that we'll be sending you in the mail. Patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Matthew is here. Rodrigo is here. Ashley is not here this week. She says she's got the crud in her throat that makes her sound like a dude.
I had that all weekend.
Oh, okay. So when you have it, does it make you sound like a woman? Is that why people call you ma'am at your job?
No, people call me ma'am at my job because people are evil.
What were you going to say, Rodrigo?
I was going to say it makes Matthew sound like the dude.
Oh, the dude. Right. Okay. All right. Let us get to some news. The Tick gets a season go-ahead from Amazon Studios. The final Luke Cage trailer is here, and everyone is ready. And will Dot to Dot replace adult coloring books? Let's find out as we spin that wheel of destiny. Round and around and around it goes, and it lands, pow, right there at number 3 on the adult coloring books, maybe replaced by Dot to Dots. What's going on with Dot to Dots? Well, apparently, Marvel is releasing with this other company called the Octopus Publishing Group, OPG. Yeah, you know me. They are releasing a giant series of dot-to-dot books, 1,000 dots that you have to connect to create some iconic Marvel characters like Captain America, Spider-Man, Captain Marvel, which, you know, it's the Captain Marvel, not Shazam. Don't get the two confused. But you can all do it in these new dot-to-dots. And I was thinking the other day, will the dot-to-dot these books replace these adult coloring books, which are all the craze? I mean, literally, I can go into the grocery store and down the magazine aisle. They have coloring books now. Not kid coloring books, but the adult, the mandalas and all that stuff. For you to go and color. My 90-year-old aunt was in the hospital. And to cheer her up, they brought her an adult coloring book that was colored in and revealed the swear words. So they've got something for everybody. But I'm wondering, will the dot-to-dot replace the coloring, Matthew?
No.
Why not?
For the same reason that Pogs didn't replace anything in the 1990s. This is variations on a theme. The coloring books, and I kind of understand the coloring book theorem. My wife has a couple because her job requires her to focus with very short breakdown periods in between. So she has a Doctor Who coloring book that she can do something to focus and, keep her consciousness alive in between the soul-sucking horror that is, taking calls on the phone. But the dot-to-dot thing really feels like, hey, I hear you guys, do you kids like the ska? It feels like we are just trying to find more things that are sort of like this thing that we can cast as our personal IP because everybody's doing coloring book. Marvel's now doing these dots to dots.
Well, it's not Marvel. It's this other book publisher licensing this stuff.
Licensing company is doing dot to dots. By the way, Captain Marvel looks terrifying.
Of course he does. It's like a Kirby dot to dot. Actually, it's probably more like Kirby in dot to dot form.
Are you sure?
Those would be pretty easy because those dots are very large.
Yeah. What do you
Kirby
think?
Dots are
what do you think, Rodrigo? Are dot to dots ready to become the next big craze?
No, I really agree with Matthew on this one. They were just like, okay, hey guys, people really liked this thing that we perceive to be a little baby thing that for some reason adults are buying. What other little baby things are there? Brainstorm now. Crossword puzzles.
Well, those are still going crazy.
Word searches.
Sudoku is still a big deal.
Yeah.
I think that dot to dot. I think we may see a big push for these. Now, again, when the first adult coloring books popped up a couple of years ago, I was like, "Oh, what is this? This is just kiddie stuff disguised as adult entertainment." Until you start to realize all the potential. Even Carl, friend Carl, who's written an article over at Major Spoilers talking about the benefits of coloring books for a number of different reasons. I think dot to dots kind of do the same thing. If someone says, "Oh, I can't color," then you can say, "Well, you can draw a line from one point to another, right?" Well, here you go. And this is just another way for people to focus, to get their minds off things that are stressors. It's light and it's easy. You can stop whenever you want and pick back up. It's not like a video game where you may have to play 20, 30 minutes at a time to complete a round or something. This is pretty no-brainer, focus fidget type material.
Yeah,
I think we're going to see some more of this pop up sooner than later.
I think partially that's why this isn't going to replace adult coloring books, because there actually is a creative aspect to adult coloring books. Even if it's just color selection, you can color whatever you want, however you want. But the dot to dot stuff, you're just following this pattern,
and then you can color it in. It's like
then you can color it in, which means it basically just turn it into a coloring book again.
I like the idea of a dot to dot because it's like, what's this going to be when it's done, right?
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to go into a page and just be like, I am only going to connect every other dot and see what the image looks like.
But I think that
the odd number dots.
Yeah, some reduction theory there going.
The existence of coloring books for adults came from a demand from adults for coloring books.
Was there a demand for adult coloring books before adult coloring books?
Adults were coloring in books meant for children. And this was happening in my call center job 10 years ago. And people were like, well, can I get a coloring book with some more adult material? That's where the mandalas come in. That's where the weird fractalization stuff comes in. And now we're seeing specifically designed books for adults rather than for children because adults were coloring. I feel like this dot to dot thing is like, oh, they're also coloring. Let's see if we can make them like this too. I'm not saying it can't be the next big thing. I'm saying I don't think it will be the next big thing because
it's definitely not and it definitely is not going to replace it, right? You might
I don't know if it'll
lure some other
replace.
people in.
I don't think it'll replace. I think you will see. I think you will actually see a reduction of the adult coloring books over the next 2 years. I think you'll see the number of selections on the shelves drop. But I think you're going to see an increase in the dot to dots.
Yeah, but I think basically adult coloring books have become a genre. Like you might see that crazy radiation go down, but you're always going to see them on the shelf from now on.
Sure. Just like you still see, the crossword puzzle. I mean, that's been around on the shelves for 25 years. That's why you'll still see the Archie digest at the checkout at certain grocery stores. It's always going to be there.
What I think we might see, rather than dot to dot being a thing unto itself, I think what we might see is just a broadening of the things that fall under that same balloon with dot to dot being part of it. Because I really don't feel like, I don't know, it's just something on a holistic level. A dot to dot feels like an entirely different process than a coloring book. It feels like it's almost the antithesis of it, just from the thought process of my brain looking at it and going, well, an adult coloring book seems soothing. A dot to dot actually feels like it makes me anxious because we have a picture.
Where's the next number? What's the one after 5?
But we have a picture up of a couple of partially finished ones on the website. Mm-hmm. And I look at that and it's just like, part of me is just like,
what do you mean?
My brain wants to finish the picture. And
then go buy it. It's going to be $14.99. Comes out on October 11th.
It's the same kind of anxiety I get when I look at a wasp nest.
As I look at this, it looks like you can finish this in parts.
It's not
because
good.
I don't know how they have these grouped, but it looks like as I'm looking at the Captain Marvel one, it looks like numbers are grouped into colors. Like some of them are green and red and blue and whatnot.
That's just another level of anxiety then.
Oh, it's going to be perfect for you, Matthew.
No, it's not.
I'm gonna get one. I'm gonna get you one for your birthday, and then as you open it up, I'm gonna design it so that all the pages fall out onto the floor at once.
All right,
and then you're just gonna be sitting there for like the rest of your holiday, just going, must complete, must complete, must complete.
I will tell you why I know you're lying. We have known each other since we were 18 years old, and you have gotten me a birthday gift precisely twice.
Oh no, I've gotten you a birthday gift many times.
No,
more than twice. He just loans them out. To be fair, there's been a couple times where Steven goes to the shop and very thoughtfully, he's like, I'm going to get this for Matthew. And then calls you up, or like we're talking on the show. And it's like, hey, Matthew, you know that ROM Space Night? And you're like, yep. And you're like, yep, I own every one. 2 copies, in fact, maybe 3. Let me check. Nope, never mind. 6 copies of all of them. Also the toys. Why? Why did you ask? And Steven's like, no reason.
Yeah, I would like it ROM the Space Night toy. Thank you very much.
Well, too bad.
Well,
after that attitude, there's also, no way.
One of those wind up.
In fact, I'm going to sit here and just break it during the show, just to
Ideal Toys Marauders that they had in the 70s, where you put it on the thing and go.
Also, I like how Steven's response to Matthew is like, Matthew's like, this makes me kind of anxious, and he's like, I'm going to get you one. Also, I'm going to make it kill you.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing. I don't know.
Happy last birthday.
Dude, dark, man. Jeez.
You said I was going to kill him, so there you go. I said I was going to get it for your birthday. I just said you were going to spend the rest of your holiday doing it. I didn't say I was going to kill you.
I will not spend any of my holiday doing it. I really, literally have very little to no interest in doing it. Now, I could do Sudoku. I'm down with the coloring. I'm okay with. When I started this job, I would draw and draw and draw and color because that's where my brain was. And it's one of those things where to color for me, the upper level brain functions, the remember this name equals this 5-digit number, or remember who does what and how you find this particular department. All of that takes up brain power. Making Captain America's costume pink and green does not. And I feel like that dot to dotting and going from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 actually feels like it's a higher level exercise. It feels like it's more brain intensive than the coloring. And I really do feel like it's a different thing on just like a purely mental level. When you break it down mechanically speaking in your brain, I don't feel like you're using the same part of your brain. And the dot to dot does not feel like a relaxing endeavor to me. It feels more like a challenging puzzle. Like if you sit down with, say, like you said, if you sit down with a crossword, that is something that engages your brain. And it's like, okay, 5 letters, blank, gold. And it's Ulis because they always use Ulis for the vowels. Mm-hmm. But I don't know.
Here's an article. Here's the only reason. The only reason I found out about the adult coloring books years ago was because it popped up into the comic book space. But apparently, the adult coloring books had been out for years. And apparently the adult dot-to-dot books have also been out for years. I'm reading a article from 2015 on a website that has a frickin' autoplay. Stupid autoplay. Boo. It means I got to close this page now and I can't read the article. But basically, it's saying that sales of adult coloring books in the last few months have been creating a big seller. And now dot-to-dots are starting to move into that space. Amazon has a number of them. The effects of this is a quote from Emily Wallace, a dot-to-dot book illustrator from London. The effect of the dot-to-dot is the same as the coloring. It helps take your mind away from your busy baby lifestyles.
From your little baby life.
Stop with the autoplay. Boo! Sites with autoplay and pop-ups. God dang you all. You are all dead to me.
Bro.
Boo. Sucky sites.
I love
literally,
that song.
I can't reading the rest of the article. Thanks, Daily Mail, for your stupid pop-ups.
That song is called Oons, Oons,
So
Oons.
it looks like dot-to-dots have been around for a while and are starting to push into the different market spaces. So there you go. Something to think about. I want to know from our listeners what they think of the dot-to-dots or the adult dot-to-dots or the million dot-to-dot books.
Adult to dot, if you will.
A dot to dot. Adult. Somehow they got to work the adult to dot. Yeah. Head over to majorspoilers.com and check it out. And while you're over there at Major Spoilers, check out an article from our friend Rand, who is one half of Ookla the Mock. He has a new article, Random Access Memory, that's up for September, where he takes a look at 40 years worth of comics that he remembers from that were released during the month of September. It's a great trip down memory lane, worth checking out. And it's over there, majorspoilers.com. We're happy to have him on board writing for us. Let me also, let's talk a little bit about this other project. They were the heroes from the future. Teenagers protecting the universe from those that would sow the seeds of chaos. Each had unique powers and abilities, and though they often had their differences, they came together to save the day as the Legion of Superheroes. Now, you can be a part of their adventures and learn the history of the future in the Legion Clubhouse. The adventure begins soon. Okay, so that is the trailer for an upcoming project called Legion Clubhouse. And as you might expect, with the logo and everything that we have out there, Legion Clubhouse is a new podcast that we're going to do looking at the Legion of Superheroes, which might be right up many of your people's alleys. Now, many of you will be saying, well, Stephen, I thought you weren't going to do any new podcasts because you didn't have the time. That's right, we don't have the time, but one of our, we're just going to call him an advertiser, reached out to us and said, hey, we want you to produce 10 episodes of a Legion of Superheroes podcast, and hopefully with the high quality that you guys do, and we know that your love of the Legion of Superheroes, we want you to produce these 10 episodes. And after that, hopefully you have enough new members over at patreon.com/majorspoilers to continue the series past that, or maybe you'll find another advertiser who wants to jump on board and pick up the episodes after that. But this is a advertiser. We're calling this person an advertiser. This advertiser has said, we want to do a Legion of Superheroes Legion of Superheroes podcast, and we want you guys to do it. So we've already released the logo. We've already released the trailer that you just heard. You can follow it at Twitter at Legion Clubhouse. It's coming soon. We're in the process of getting things nailed down with interviews and other cool people, and reading through back issues of Legion like crazy. It's only 10 episodes long. It could be longer with your support. Patreon.com/majorspoilers. We figure we need to add 100 new patrons to the list in order for this to be an ongoing show. But you can find out more. When is it going to launch? Either in December or January. So we've got a couple of months, but we will continue to push it and let you know about it. You can find it on iTunes right now and sign up for it. Should be a lot of fun. So that is Legion Clubhouse. Be on the lookout for it. Another podcast from the Major Spoilers Podcast Network. Podcast. All right, let us hit up some reviews. Rodrigo, you got to spend some time in the shop this weekend, opening up your magic cards and hopefully winning some tournaments.
Cracking packs and heads. Bam, bam, bam. Nope, I lost a lot.
What?
Yeah.
And
Kaladesh bad. Yeah, so I went to the pre-release for Kaladesh, the newest set from Magic the Gathering, and I came out of the gate really well. Like, I actually won my first game match. Which one's the bigger one, the game or the match? Match.
I think it goes game, set, match.
Yeah.
Okay, so I won basically I won 2-0 my first one because it's best of 3, and then proceeded to lose the next 2 by 2 as well. Like, I just lost everything else after that. And then I went home because my girlfriend was super sleepy. And I think she did a little bit better than me, but I don't remember. In any case, Kaladesh is the newest set from Magic. It is a very artifact-heavy set. It introduces vehicles into Magic, so now you can load up your slippery boggles and rabid wombats into a car and have them drive around.
Car full of rabid wombats is
yeah, pretty much. So there's a few mechanics that are pretty interesting. There's one that allows you to basically, when a creature comes in, you can either put a counter, +1/+1 counter on it, or make a new a little servo, like a little friend to fight with them. There's the vehicle one, and then there's energy, which is essentially counters that you can use to pay for certain things. And energy doesn't stay on the creature like some other counters have in the past, but rather they stay with you. So even if that creature dies, if you cast something else later that can use energy, it can be used. All around, like, it was cool. I mean, I'm into it, I think, but it's not really something that I'm all that interested in. Magic really returns to kind of these artifact heavy sets with some frequency because people really, really like artifact heavy sets, and Magic has really gotten into the business of giving their largest kind of demographics what they want. This is why Magic has started returning more frequently to other worlds, right? So if you recall, we just came back from Innistrad, and before that we had just come back from Zendikar, and the list of planes that we have returned to is wide, and obviously they're also coming up with new ones like Kaladesh. Although because Kaladesh is featured in Magic Origins, it might also feel like a return, but that's neither here nor there. But altogether, there was just something kind of missing from this set. I don't know if it was just, and I'm not just saying it from having just my face crushed for about from midnight till 5 a.m. one morning. I mean, like, having looked at the set and done all this stuff, is, I don't know, there's just kind of it really just doesn't seem that interesting to me. And it might be that kind of like first set, setting things up before the real conflict comes through in the second set. Maybe that'll have more interesting variations on the energy theme, more interesting variations on the vehicle themes. Because when you introduce new things, you obviously have to do the most basic versions of them first, right? If you can't run before you can walk, and you can't hop on a flying boat before you know how it works. So altogether, I give it 3 slices of meatloaf. It was a lot of fun. It was good times. The art is great. But even then, I mean, even then, because of all the artifact stuff, it's like there's literally a card called Filigree Familiar, and artifact filigree was a thing in Shards. So it's like there's really only so many types of artifacts you can do. You go back to an artifact set like Mirrodin, and everything's like spiky and the 90s, and it's like, okay, that's one kind of artifact. But then eventually you are going to do them all. You're going to do every type of robot there can be. And with Kaladesh, it really feels a lot of the time like a return to Esper in Shards. So I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing. I think the constant return to artifact stuff, the quality of the art, still top notch though. I'm going to give it 3 slices of meatloaf. Definitely go check it out. But I'm probably not going to be buying a lot of packs of this one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, probably not.
No tournaments or anything like that for you?
Because a tournament is its own experience. Like, for example, I wasn't into the first Innistrad, or actually the second Innistrad. But I ended up going to a lot of tournaments because I was dating someone at the time who wanted to go, because tournaments are kind of their own thing, and because a store had recently opened that was pretty close to where everybody was living in Hayes. So it just, like, it was like super easy to just go and blow $30 every couple of weeks in a tournament. So because they're their own experience, I'm fine going to tournaments. I'm just not going to seek it out. That said, there's been sets that I love that I don't go to any tournaments for.
Yeah.
Because I just want to hoard the cards, and I don't want other people to
touching them. Don't
yeah,
touch
exactly.
My cards.
Touch my cards, my precious.
All right. Thank you for that, Rodrigo. Out this week from DC Comics is Blue Beetle #1, not to be confused with Blue Beetle Rebirth #1 that I reviewed a couple of weeks ago right here on this very podcast. But this week,
not to be confused.
Not to be confused. Although
but we are.
Well, and it's going to be even more confusing, because remember the last time when I reviewed Rebirth, it was like they're dropping us right back into a storyline from 10 years ago, And it doesn't make sense why they're doing this. Well, it gets even more interesting in this #1 issue because guess who shows up in this issue? The Posse. And Ted Cord and Jaime Reyes have this conversation where Ted is talking with some Posse members. And Jaime's like, why are you hanging out with gang members? And Ted's like, well, they're meta-humans, and they have formed a gang. And then Jaime's like, well, does that mean they're evil? He goes, they're in a nebulous zone right now. They could be evil. They could be in Justice Society. They could be in Justice Society, or they could be the good guys. Let's give them some time, and let's see what we can do together. And it's like, holy crap, this is... And Jaime is like, has never had any interactions with these guys. So it's really, again, I'm so confused. I mean, this is like, please put a giant magnet up to my head, flip the switch a couple of times to make sure that all memory of previous Blue Beetle series have been erased completely from my mind. Unless, of course, you need a really important bit of history of who the Blue Beetle is to understand what's going on in this series.
Dan Garrett, he's a cop from Chicago.
Yeah, not even here. They didn't even expand upon the Rebirth issue at the end of that one where Dr. Fate shows up and is like, it's not an alien, it's magic. This one starts with a dream sequence of Jaime telling his friends about this sequence where a giant beetle was fighting Dr. Fate, but it wasn't him. And I don't know. I trust Keith Giffen a lot. And I think for new readers, this might be fine. But for fans of the Blue Beetle, I think it's just confusing. I really think that it's super confusing because it's like we are dropping back into a 10-year-old series, like right in the middle of it, that you all know because you've read Blue Beetle forever, but all of that stuff that we dropped you back into the middle of doesn't exist. It never happened. It's so weird. It's like a weird rebirth, a reboot. Rebirth. It's a rebirth coming for me.
Rhubarb.
So I don't know. I'm still reading this series. I enjoyed it for what it was. I enjoyed it. But I think it's hard for me to separate this as a continuity character or a legacy character in a new series that it's supposed to be a new hero. It's weird. So I'm giving it 3 out of 5 slices of meatloaf. It's good enough. It's fine. But man, longtime Blue Beetle fans, I think you're going to be a little weirded out by everything.
Man, now you know how I felt about everything that was printed between 1991 and 1998.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, but at least in then, you had Zero Hour that kind of reset everything.
Yeah, I don't know that saying at least you have 0 Hour has ever made anybody feel better.
No, 0 Hour was like Rebirth only. Actually, 0 Hour and Rebirth are the same thing.
Basically the same thing.
They are exactly the same
Actually,
thing.
yeah, they are exactly the same thing. I hadn't even thought of that. But yeah, it's like you have the New 52 versus Crisis, and then you have Rebirth versus 0 Hour. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to have to like walk through it, but I just walked through it.
It is.
It's happening. It's happening, man.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know. I like Rebirth. I like some of the things going on with Rebirth.
Is new again. And that's
Blue
the
Beetle
thing.
is just the weird cog in this giant story.
Because you had an emotional attachment to those stories, you don't necessarily need to see them rehashed.
But it's not like
they're being...
But the thing is, they're not even being rehashed. It's not even like they're retelling this story. It's like it's a new story, but it's like, okay, Matthew.
But
let's
events
take you
that
back,
happened are happening again.
Yeah, let's take you back to 1991.
Right.
And you remember everything that happened in 1991. But this time, when you go back to 1991, none of those things
Am I
happening.
French? Can I be French? I would be French in 1999.
Yeah.
No. Yeah,
so
I'm with you.
It's really weird. It's just like
I'm with you.
Everything is familiar but not. And I think that's the problem with Blue Beetle.
This is where this is what comics do in the modern age, I think.
Well, why not just reprint one of those big black and white phone books of old Blue Beetle stuff and say, here's everything you need to know about Blue Beetle. Now we're telling you new stuff.
Reprints don't sell.
And that's the thing is like, this is what we've been seeing from the movies, superhero movies, and this is what we've been seeing in animated shows, where they just kind of pick and choose and change, and leads to very, complicated conversations when somebody new gets into it, and they're like, "Oh man, isn't it weird how they're like, oh, it's technology, but actually it's magic." It's like actually it used to be something else. Unless you watch the cartoon, then it is that.
Right.
Like.
And if you ask me, what's the deal with Earth 2? Well, the original Earth 2 was an alternate Earth vibrating at a different frequency. After the Crisis on Infinite Earths, Earth 2 is actually an antimatter duplicate in the world of Cord. But after the New 52, Earth 2 is once again a separate Earth, but it's a different separate Earth than the original Earth 2, which was a separate Earth that had Superman and Batman before. Whereas, you get to a point where they cycle and they cycle and they cycle to some degree.
Continuity. Even though
you got to love
and DC has said that continuity doesn't matter. What they're really trying to do is tell good stories with these characters, and they're not going to be tied down to decades old stories.
Whether somebody is alive or dead is irrelevant.
Yeah,
well, that's nonsense. Them saying that continuity is not a thing is like if that's true, then they're doing it wrong. If continuity is not a thing, you don't need to reset the whole universe.
Right. What they mean
they haven't
is
reset the whole universe.
The bad parts of continuity.
Yes, the bad parts of continuity are not there.
The parts of continuity we don't like are not relevant.
Yeah.
And when they go back and they retcon things or they create a change so that Barry Allen is back in the Flash suit, but he's basically just Wally West, that's what is considered the good kind of continuity, because the people writing the story have that big name, but they can do whatever they want with it, and that's to some degree is the strength and the weakness of Rebirth, in that if you didn't read, especially if you didn't read it in the last couple of weeks like we did, the Blue Beetle series from 2006, you might not make these connections.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's why I said earlier is that if you're a longtime fan, you're going to be scratching your head a lot saying, why is this happening? If you're a new 52 and forward reader, then all this stuff is going to be just fine.
I'm a longtime fan, and it's all clicks and buzzes, but it's cool. Some of it's fun.
Yeah. Oh no,
Wally West has a cool silver costume now.
Overall, I think Rebirth is fun, and I think it's drawn me back into a lot of the DC comics, so that's a plus. I just wish that they would do a better job of trying to clear things up instead of just here you go kind of stuff. Figure it out yourself.
I think they'll get there.
I think that's the big payoff on Rebirth is who's been messing with stuff, how much did they mess with stuff, and when is everyone going to remember that they've done this stuff before? And that's kind of what's been going on.
You and I have been having this discussion for 25 years because in 94, when they revamped the Legion under Mark Waid,
right,
that was your Legion and all these cool things were happening. And I'm like, but they're telling the story that they've already told. They're referencing this old story, but instead of Pharaoh Lad dying, Pharaoh Lad lives for some reason, and then afterwards there's kind of
sun
no
that
point.
needs to be reignited.
Yeah, there's no point to Pharaoh Lad at that point.
Yeah, and it's like so many things. It's like you just get into. So it's like somebody writes a story, and 20 years later they reboot the universe, and somebody rewrites that story, but it ends differently or it does something else.
And
right?
it's not even.
So like
and it's
partially,
not even,
it's like. Some of the changes they're doing, it might be okay. So the whole Blue Beetle thing is like,
it would be different if this were the ultimate DC universe, but it's not the ultimate DC universe.
It makes more sense to be like, oh, we all think this is technology, but actually it's magic because Blue Beetle stuff looks very technological. So it's like that twist makes a lot more sense. I'm like. I'm interested in that idea because it actually makes more sense. So good job, new writer. But then again, a lot of even that change itself could be just being like, haha, I'm going to take the twist from the previous version and twist it up in a different version. And it just seems that like doing that just kind of like weirdly narrows everything. And then the next time a story is retold, it just becomes weirdly even narrower. Those choices that they make to try to stretch it, to not kill a character, to change a character, to change the character that dies. Right. They're just kind of like these weird little teases for people that have already read this story.
Yeah.
I kind of wish they did do an ultimate DC universe and kept the pre-New 52 stuff floating around. That would have worked.
Do you not remember what happened to the Ultimate Marvel universe?
Well, it aged itself out. It went 10 years and then it aged itself out. It started
collapsing about 5 years in, because everything you knew was wrong.
Right.
And then they literally destroyed the entire universe because it's an alternate universe. It totally doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it gave people this chance to retell those stories that someone wanted to retell that may not have needed to be retold. Or it gave a chance for people to jump on that didn't want to get mired down in continuity, so on and so forth, which is kind of what they're doing now, but they're
and really
not making that access point back to the previous universes.
I think the only 100% good thing about the old Ultimate Universe, and you can argue that there were lots of good things about it, but the one thing that I find it difficult to argue is that it gave people a clear jumping on point. And weirdly, Marvel locked themselves out of doing that thing where they're like, Spider-Man number 1, number 2, number 3, number 300, number 301, number 3, number 2, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 1. And those are all continuous comics, right? Because they made this new system, they couldn't futz with the numbering. That is probably the best thing that they could have done with that. And the fact that it went away is fine.
Yeah.
But
now they've got themselves forced into number 1.19, number 1.20, 1.21.
Well, I mean, they're always
21 gigawatts.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's interesting, Matthew mentioned Mark Waid and Legion of Superheroes. I wonder if that has anything to do with anything. But Matthew, let us talk about a comic that's coming out next week, October 8th. Yeah. From Dynamite Entertainment. I'm kind of interested to see how this goes, especially because what is it? I think it's the Matt Wagner. Is it the Matt Wagner or the one of the variants is very spooky because it's got what's his name from Out of the Inkwell.
Yeah, Coco,
and it just it's creepy. That is who is that variant?
I'm pretty sure that's Chaykin.
Chaykin, that's who it is. Yeah,
Howie Chaykin.
Yeah, that's the one that I want to get because it's so disturbing.
It is super creepy. Howard Chaykin drawing Betty Boop. Betty Boop number 1. You remember how I once said that Dynamite is going to literally leverage the options to everything? Betty Boop number 1 is followed by the number 1 adventure of the mouse that lived under my refrigerator. But Betty Boop number 1, written by Roger Langridge. You remember Roger Langridge did the amazing Muppet comics.
Yeah.
And drawn by Giselle Lagasse. You may know Giselle from her online comic Ménage à Trois, where she draws sexy stuff that looks remarkably like classic Archie comics. So I picked this up solely because I saw that name on the cover, and I'm like, wait, Giselle's got a monthly comic book, and it's about Betty Boop? Oh, hell yeah, I'm in. So I'm buying this. It's a revamp of a character from 1930. So they're sort of retelling the stories. That's not true. I'm just being a jerk. For those of you who don't know who Betty Boop is one of the early, super early animated characters.
Oh, yeah. 1930.
Yep. This book basically sets you up and says, okay, you know all that stuff you know about Betty Boop? You totally know that. Don't worry about it. Just move on. And so Enter the Lizard begins. And it's really fascinating how perfectly crafted this is. It's like a little locket with a little picture inside. We open at the Oopadoop Club. Of course, Cab Calloway is not licensed to Dynamite Entertainment, but it's okay because Scat Skellington and his All Osseous Orchestra is. And as this issue opens, we see Coco the Clown and Bongo the Dog, or Bimbo the Dog. Bongo was a different character, standing in this weird sort of black and white club, which seems to be in the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And Sassy Sally is there, and all of these characters that I know we've seen drawn in Giselle's style. It's really bizarre because it's got just these little bits and pieces and elements that you think. I remember seeing these Max Fleischer cartoons on unlicensed VHSs in the 80s.
Or even if you were younger, you would have seen them on Saturday or just on your morning cartoon shows on regular television and reruns.
Trying not to date ourselves here.
Yeah, no, I don't mind dating myself. I'm quite nice.
Betty shows up, and then we have a musical number. Musical numbers in comics are tough.
Yeah.
Musical numbers in comics usually don't work. This one does. There's also what looks very much like a cameo from Betty's creator, which I really, really love. And then Scat Skellington is a skeleton. He's a dancing skeleton with a skeleton band. And I'm sure this will appeal to Rodrigo, who loves dancing skeletons.
Mm-hmm.
But the musical number leads us to the realization that Betty's Grampy is being evicted from his home.
Oh,
because
no.
someone is trying to steal his house, and it turns out they're trying to steal his house. They're evil ghosts led by a guy named Lenny Lizard Lips. Why do they want the house? I got no idea. But this is truly beautiful. Just the economy of motion in this story. There's a page spread where she grabs a cab and she's trying to get home as quickly as possible. And it looks like a game board. You know how the Game of Life has that snaky road?
Mm-hmm.
And as you go, there's dialogue and there's little jokes and bits and pieces. But the car looks phenomenal. The characters look phenomenal. There are cartoon touches. The cartoon logic of the 1930s is a very, very scary and alien beast, my young friends. And it holds in this comic. I don't know if Langridge is a huge fan of Betty Boop, but he's definitely done his homework.
I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, I think he also did some Popeye stuff, if I'm not mistaken. And Popeye had his origin in, or at least his cartoon origin in a Betty Boop cartoon.
Yeah, Popeye, his first appearances, yeah. And we get to the end and we find out not necessarily the why, but the who wants Betty's house. And you know who it is?
Who?
The devil.
Uh-oh.
It seems that the literal devil wants to repossess Betty Boop's house. Now that right there, my friends, is worth the price of admission. Here's the thing. When I say I would recommend a comic book, it doesn't always mean that I like it. And when I say I like a comic, it doesn't always mean that I recommend it. This is that weird, nebulous nexus of, I really like this. I'm not a huge fan of Betty Boop. I do remember the cartoons, but I remember a lot of cartoons. I know that a lot of the girls I used to work with love Betty Boop. They put little pictures of her on their desk. So I'm sure Betty Boop is still,
she's super
a living
still.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can go to Hot Topic and buy a Betty Boop shirt. I'll bet you right now. But this issue feels like it's of a piece with the Fleischer Brothers cartoons of the 30s. And that's hard. And the dialogue is great. And the musical numbers are great. And the goofy, over-the-top things, at one point, they're revealed to the villains because Grandpa takes off his shoe and his foot stink is so bad that it permeates through the brick wall of the house. That's one of those moments that you're like, this would not work in any other universe but a cartoon universe. I am telling you, you want to read this book. Don't get the Howard Chaykin cover because it will give you nightmares and you will die and Coco the Clown will come and take your soul and put it in a box of pickles or something. But definitely check out Betty Boop #1 from Dynamite, written by Roger Langridge, drawn by Giselle Lagasse. I'm going to go with 3 slices of meatloaf. I would go 3.5. You know what? I'm going to go 3.5. I am changing. Hang on. Let me write this right in here. 3.5 slices of meatloaf. Because I'm looking at this and I'm like, I did like that. That was good.
Roger Langridge did do a Popeye series over at IDW. So he's definitely familiar with this era and the characters in there. And he's done a lot of really good things. And if you like his work, it's generally kiddish friendly. I think that you should be able to pick this up without a problem. And
I would say maybe 10 and older on this. There's some scary imagery. There's nothing sexy.
It's like Casper the Friendly Ghost type scary.
I don't even know about that. It's scarier than that.
Well, if you want to be kind of creeped out and in awe all at once, and you want to kind of see what I always envisioned Coco the Clown sounding like, go check out this group called Postmodern Jukebox. They do a lot of remixes and covers of popular songs. But one of the guys that they have singing with them is Puddles the Sad Clown, or Puddles the Clown. And he's got a marvelous voice. I mean, it is brilliant. And he dresses like a clown. He's a sad clown. But go listen to the Postmodern Jukebox version of Royals, and it's great. And
don't listen to that.
No, it's really good.
That. It was stuck in my head for days, and I could not sleep.
With Puddles,
the clown would eat me.
Yeah, no, it's really good. Go check it out. It's fantastic.
No way.
And you can go check out other stuff that Puddles has done with them. I enjoy their YouTube channel a lot, and I will check out almost every new release that they do. So there you go. All righty. Did I mention that we have a website? It's called majorspoilers.com. And over there at this website called majorspoilers.com, you can find reviews, you can find news, you can find previews, you can find interviews, you can find other podcasts that we do. It's all over at majorspoilers.com. In fact, you can even find the Major Spoilers Poll of the Week.
Of the week.
Were you deaf yet, Rodrigo?
What?
Are you deaf? Are you deaf? I'm talking to you. I know
It
all
could
of
be
our
worse.
listeners
I
are. I'm
could be
sorry.
a Vuvuzuela.
I'm sorry. Well, it's about as bad as the Vuvuzela, so there you go. I'm sorry, listeners who were using their tweaked audio headphones to listen to that because you heard it in its in full loudness and intensity.
Quality.
Yes, because tweaked audio is all about producing some high quality things to put in your ears.
I backed way off.
I would say if you're going to get a pair of tweaked audio headphones, get an optional microphone built in. These things are designed for music and talk. They're engineered for durability. And best of all, listeners, when you head over to tweakedaudio.com and you enter the code MAJOR, you're going to save 33% off the price. It's tweakedaudio.com. Thank you, Tweaked Audio, for sponsoring this episode of the Major Spoilers podcast. This weekend, I had forgotten my Tweaked Audio headphones, and I was at a gas station. And I was like, oh, I need some earbuds. And so I just bought a pair off the frickin' rack. And, 5 minutes later, these things were a tangled mess. And it took another 5 minutes to get them untangled. That doesn't happen with the Tweaked Audio headphones with their flat cable designs. I've never had a Tweaked Audio headphone cable get so wound up on itself that I can't undo it in just a second or two. I really like my Tweaked Audio headphones, and I bet you would too. Tweakedaudio.com, enter the code MAJOR at checkout for 33% off the price.
Nice.
Back to that poll of the week. This week was written into us. I forget who it was. Floby, I think. Lieutenant Floby.
Sounds right.
Yeah. He wants to know who was the most powerful Sith Lord, or who is the most powerful Sith Lord. And we have Darth Bane. Here's Batman. We have Darth, what is this guy's name?
Darth
Plagueis?
Plagueis.
Darth
Plagueis.
Plagueis. I thought his name was Plagiarism. Darth Plagiarism.
Darth Plagiarism, or Darth Liefeld, actually, is who you're thinking.
Darth Sidious, also known as the Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
Palpatine. Darth Maul.
Mm-hmm.
Darth Tyrannus.
Right.
Dooku.
Darth Rex.
And Darth Vader. Those are your choices. Darth Bane, Darth Plagueis, Darth Sidious, Darth Maul, Darth Tyrannus, or Darth Vader.
Throughout episode 3, the Emperor talks to Anakin about Darth Plagueis, the eldest and wisest of the Sith.
Who
had the ability to overcome death itself.
I see.
Who had the ability to beat everyone at Pong.
So does that mean, Matthew, that he is the greatest of all of the Darth Sith Lords?
No. Not to me, anyway. Because when you say who is the most powerful, who is the greatest of the Sith Lord,
it says who is the most powerful Sith Lord.
Right. I have to look at the evidence that we've been shown on screen. So if I'm looking at the evidence that I've seen on screen, I am unfamiliar with Darth Bane. Darth Plagueis gets discussed, but is not seen. Darth Maul gets chopped in half. Darth Tyrannus gets chopped in two. The Emperor, Darth Sidious, has a really good fight scene, but eventually gets chucked off a balcony to his inevitable doom by Darth Vader, who, as we'll remember, choked a man from half a system away on another ship. Now that's some force power. So I had to go with Darth Vader. And I think part of this is that thing that I say, well, I'm probably just voting for the most famous one. To some degree, yes, but we see the most of Vader's abilities. So to me, of what we see of Vader and Sidious and Dooku, I feel like Vader evokes the most power on screen, the most things we see him doing.
I went, and here's the reason why I kind of threw Darth Vader out and didn't vote for him, is because in the end, he doesn't stay a Sith Lord. He decides to convert and go back to his ways and confess.
He retires on top.
He retired. So for me,
I was murdered.
I went with Palpatine. I went with Darth Sidious because, or Sidious if he was a plant type.
Darth Sidious.
But yeah, just him being able to manipulate and control everything. And he was doing it with his mind control abilities to manipulate everybody behind the scenes for decades until he could seize power and wipe out the Jedi. I went with him. And Darth Maul, I like him. I like his aesthetic. But really, to get cut in half and then come back as a spider robot monster, kind of lame. And Dooku,
he looked cool, but never followed through on it.
Yeah, if I can't see your real live face, then I guess I don't count you as a Sith Lord. If it has to be an art rendering in a comic book or something.
Oh, be careful!
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't read. I'm sure a lot of people really are into Darth Bane, but I don't read or get into any of the extended universe stuff. So unfortunately, I can't say on either one of those two guys.
Yeah, there have been actually a lot of like crazy Sith Lords that have accomplished like way bigger things than the movie guys. Like there's like a guy out there who could like just explode planets with his dark force, and like basically the guy from The Force Unleashed is a Sith Lord, and he accomplishes all kinds of crazy stuff. Like the video game Sith Lords, like Malak and Revan, like they have huge body counts, like all of these crazy adventures, and most of the time they're just like people don't even remember them. For me though, it's gonna be definitely Darth Tyrannus, just because he has that army of orcs.
Yeah,
right.
And he hates trees.
Yeah,
right. He released that metal album when he was 93.
Yeah, he's the baddest guy. He's a Dracula. He's the only Sith Dracula.
He was the basis of James Bond.
Yeah, that's right. So
that's a good call.
He's
the only one who sounds like a dinosaur.
That's right.
If there was a Darth Tricera, I would totally vote for her.
Yeah. Go ahead.
This is completely an aside. The child and I watched episode 2 and 3 this weekend, and she realized during the discussion between Sidious and Vader, and she looked at me, and I'm so proud of her because she's like, "So does Darth mean in?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yes, it does." And she's like, "Great, I'm going to be Darth Coherent."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yes, you're making the jokes that the people were making. I'm so proud of you." She's joking at a 10th grade level.
Yeah, good job.
I'm Darth Continent, by the way.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. Darth Transigent. Remember
All right. Listeners, you can head over to Majorspoilers.com, cast your vote in the Major Spoilers poll of the week. Who is the most powerful Sith Lord? You got to vote. And get the vote now, because poor Darth Bane is kind of lagging in the polls.
Poor Darth
Donald
Bane.
Trump is doing well, though.
Yeah, a very powerful Sith Lord.
There you go.
Darth Trump. Yeah.
How's everyone voting so far, Matthew?
Well, not surprisingly, Darth Sidious, also known as Emperor Palpatine, is at the top of the heap, 37% of the vote.
Really?
Darth Bane is not doing so badly with 15%. Darth Plagueis seems to have 15% of the vote. Darth Maul, only 4%. Darth Percent. Darth Percent. Darth Percent from that one.
Yes.
Yeah, Darth Tyrannus has 3% of the vote. Vader, surprising to me, coming in at 27%. So behind the Emperor. But I expected a bigger turnout.
I really thought Darth Vader would get more votes. And maybe he will, because this is up for a week. It's only been up for a day. So, many more people will flood in once they find out that, hey, who is the most powerful Sith Lord?
Well, and the thing is, I think when you say most powerful, there's this automatic idea that it's like Force magical powers. And by far, the biggest displays of Force power come from Sidious, especially if you consider the prequels.
True.
Like
that scene where he killed Mace Windu is like
right, and it's all the Force lightning and like lifting things and stuff, whereas Darth Vader's tend to be like very small, calculated things that are scary.
Yeah,
the big displays of power usually come from Sidious.
Oh, yeah.
Tyrannus's battles with Yoda and Anakin were pretty heavy duty, though.
Yeah, pretty CGI and laden.
But that Tyrannus battle with Yoda was like really impressive, heavy duty stuff with throwing stuff across the room telekinetically while chopping you in two. It's nice.
Oh yeah, I mean that's, even though it's all CG, it is probably what people had hoped that an all-out duel to the death, Jedi battle would be like. I mean, we kind of got a sense for it in Phantom Menace, where you have some younger actors flipping around and Darth Maul doing his dual lightsaber trick. But I really think that even seeing Yoda flip and tumble and flip and shoot things across was kind of impressive.
Yeah, that was what we wanted out of those movies. And I don't know. I feel like the CGI isn't not a selling point for me. I feel like the CGI in a Star
Well,
Wars
it's better than
universe,
Frank Oz running around with a puppet on his head going, ah!
it's not better. It's just different.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. I don't consider CGI to be better than practical
Oh,
effects.
no, I don't either. In fact,
the effect of the scene is what I want.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. No, I was actually kind of pooping on that scene because it was so, I don't know. It just was. It takes you out of the characters,
slick, and it's very satiny. It has that satiny '90s CGI that you see, and the same thing happens when Obi-Wan is riding his giant
lizard.
gecko. Yeah, and
lizard bird.
He's fighting with Darth Bane in that weird '60s motorcycle thing.
Yeah, what was that four-armed robot guy's name? What was his name? Wasn't it? Wasn't he a Darth?
That was
no.
Count. That was no. Not Count. Count Dooku is Darth Tyrannus. That guy is General Grievous.
Oh, Grievous. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, and he's not a Jedi. He just knows how to lightsaber fight.
Well, I think anybody could, right? I mean, you don't have to be a Jedi to wield a lightsaber.
Right. It really depends on what you read and what you care about, because the expanded universe is a huge mess. For example...
well, that's why they got rid of it.
For example, Darth Bane, I think, is the guy who instituted that there's only 2 Sith at a time.
Oh, really?
But I'm pretty sure that comes from that single line where Yoda is like, there's usually 2 of those guys. And I always assumed that what he meant was, if there's one, then there's going to be another one, not there's only ever 2 Sith ever.
They travel in pairs rather than there are only 2.
Well,
right.
Well, there's also
I don't know
Darth Krayt, who travels around with Darth Barrel, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
What, gosh, and this maybe you guys may not know, but in the Star Wars Rebels series, especially at the end of this last season, there are Jedi hunters. And these are guys that, there's 3 of them. They're almost like the Storms from Big Trouble in Little China. But they wield lightsabers, and I'm pretty sure they have some control of the Force. But they're not Jedi, so they would have to be, I guess you wouldn't be a Sith Lord, but you would have to be anti-Jedi something.
Well, again, it's like in the expanded universe, there were other Force traditions.
Right. The Mandalorians had, didn't they have some sort of Force?
Right. The Witches of Danthamir, whatever. It's all like, there's lots of non-Sith, non-Jedi Force users. It's just the Sith and the Jedi ruin it for everybody.
Way to go, you guys. Head over to Majorspoilers.com. Cast your vote in the Major Spoilers poll of the week. Can't wait to see what everyone has to say. This week, we thought we would dive into an indie comic, because, we do that occasionally, and I know a lot of people like it when we talk other comics besides the big 2 all the time. So I thought we'd take a look at The Adventures of Wally Fresh, Volume 1, Cupid's Arrow by Turner Lang. Wally Fresh is a layabout in Brooklyn, but he's got a hot date. And somehow he's got to convince his beaver friend, yes, beaver friend, and the next door neighbor, what's her name, Eileen? I forget what her name is. Valerie, to stay out of it. And then things get weird. It is The Adventures of Wally Fresh, Volume 1, Cupid's Arrow.
See, he's a spirit animal, his beaver friend, Barry the Beaver.
Yeah, because, those things happen. And they share a very nice, spacious space in Brooklyn.
Well, if somebody's paying half the rent, I don't care if he's a spirit beaver or, I don't know, a French dude, something.
Yeah. So, Rodrigo, break this down for me. Break this entire story down really quick.
Break it down.
I think you can do it really quick.
But plot-wise?
Yeah.
So, Wally has a date with someone he met on the internet. His roommate, who is a beaver, and his next-door neighbor, who is a chick in a corset, are like gonna hang out together, and then the beaver is like, oh yeah, he met her on the internet, and she's like, what? So she dresses up like a ninja, and I guess she actually is a ninja, and attacks the restaurant and like beats up all the staff, and then basically ruins Wally's date. But they continue the date, but then it turns out that she was right and the date is crazy, so she's like has like a lair, and she like straps him to a table, and she's going to kill him. And then the beaver and the other girl are like, oh no, we figured out who she is. And then they go and they rescue him.
That's pretty much it. It's black and white. It's a single creator. It's 4 issues long, 148 pages in the electronic copy that we are reviewing. Here's the thing, okay? It's not a great comic book, all right? But having made my way all the way through it, I can really honestly see this as a movie. In that, not a big budget movie, but in that weird, and I don't want to besmirch Kevin Smith, but in that weird Kevin Smith indie spirit kind of crazy wackiness that you sometimes get when three hot girls kidnap Jay and Silent Bob and give them a monkey to save the world or something. In that kind of a way, I could kind of see this be a movie. But it's a weird story, and I personally didn't find it that great. And I didn't find it horrible, but I didn't find it great. Rodrigo, where did you fall on this?
It's interesting. I definitely didn't hate it. I found that for such an offbeat story, it was actually like weirdly tropey. Like the crazy person you meet on the internet, I feel is kind of a dead horse trope. Like people nowadays meet on the internet all the time, and sometimes the interactions go badly and sometimes they go well, but so many people are meeting other people on the internet that it's very difficult to say people you meet on the internet are bad, or can't meet, or people are using online dating because they can't meet anybody else or something like that. It's just easy. Like you just
easy target.
You sign up. Yeah, you just sign up to a website and they do a lot of the work for you. It makes
Cupid
sense.
And Love Match
absolutely.
And Craigslist, all those safe places.
So on the other hand, it's like there's this like wacky kind of pet / sidekick character. And this is also stuff that we've seen before. It's reminiscent of something like Ted. It's reminiscent of something like even your Howard the Duck, where there's like one anthropomorphic animal in the world, basically in the world that you see. That's not something that threw me. I was like expecting more like magic or weird stuff to show up. And other than the fact that Wally is the most fantastic fighter in Toronto, you don't see much else that is weird.
Right. Well, I mean, Valerie, the next door neighbor, is a ninja.
Is apparently. A ninja, yeah.
But there are plenty of. I mean, Valerie and the gopher or the beaver seem to be best friends because they're going to just trip on mushrooms and watch The Secret of Nim while Wally goes on his date. But because the two of them for the next 2 issues in this 4-issue miniseries are teamed up together, it provides ample opportunity for store owners and other people to go, "Hey, is that your beaver?" So you get a lot of beaver jokes in the piece.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And also copious amounts of mushroom use.
Yeah. That the beaver joke, and in full disclosure, I did not get the whole book. I only read about a third of the book because there was a download error on my part, and I'm old and stupid. But more importantly,
my new ringtone.
Shut up. There's your new ringtone. Shut up, Steven.
Nope, not my ringtone.
Steven.
But I don't know. There's some of this that feels like it is a throwback to 80s black and white comics. And in good ways and bad ways, in that it's a unique story. It's a story that nobody else is going to tell. I had overtones of Boris the Bear, if you guys remember Boris the Bear. Things that you would see in like a Critters comic from 1991, definitely all there. But there's a crudeness to some of the humor that was really off-putting to me. And the first issue's discussion of what are you going to do when you meet this girl just felt kind of creepy. Then Valerie shows up, and Valerie's like this super hot gothy ninja girl. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we have this. And then, of course, there's a long discussion about pornography, and there's something with an inflatable girlfriend. And there's a lot of things in here where I'm just like, I felt like it was aimed at a younger audience. And by younger, I
definitely.
think maybe more juvenile.
Yeah, 12, 13, 14-year-olds. I mean, there's no nudity, but I mean, there's, like, as you said, the Beaver is into some, like, BDSM and some other stuff. Sex toys aplenty, drug use. I mean, so, from that aspect, you probably don't want to say, hey, 12-year-old, read this book. But you're right, it is that juvenile approach to, like I said, teenage movie humor.
And that's not necessarily bad.
No.
But it's definitely not something that I'm thrilled to read about. I liked lots of little artistic set pieces. I kind of liked that every once in a while you'd get a texture bit that was overlaid on something, where you have like the unmoving plaids that you see in Gotham Academy. Sometimes you'd see those textures on clothing or in a background, which is nice. But this is definitely a young creator kind of getting his feet underneath him, which, again, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And if someone is putting out a book like this and there's an audience that really, really wants it, that's great. I feel like that's something that definitely should be happening. We should be seeing more independent creators learning their craft and showing off the things that they know how to do. But I don't know that it's necessarily for me, especially, the portions of it where we had like a whole page, actually 2 pages, of Barry and Valerie preparing to get high and watch a movie, putting on helmets and goggles and sitting in front of a TV. And it's a cute picture.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's really neat. And you can see how much fun it might have been to write it and put it together. But the reading experience doesn't always bring out the joy. And frankly, the whole thing with the girl and the thong and the tube top, and turns out maybe she's a murderer. Maybe, yeah, okay.
Apparently, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Problem with it? Okay. Apparently, they have made an animated movie of at least the first part of this book.
Not surprised.
It appeared at the 2015 Beverly Hills Film Festival. The Adventures of Wally Fresh, written and directed by Turner Lang, starring Brio Banyan, Caitlin Shanner, and Noel Arthur. So there you go.
I kind of like
it may be out there somewhere if you want to see this. But what I'm seeing a lot online is it falls right in the middle. Most people are like, hey, don't hate it, don't love it, but it's good. And I really think that there's a target audience for it. And like I said, I could really see a live action crazy movie made out of this. Any other thoughts? What didn't you like, Rodrigo?
What didn't I like? I don't know. There wasn't anything in particular that I hated about it. It did seem, I don't know. It's like most of the beats I could call. There wasn't anything that was like too surprising about it. The only thing that was slightly surprising is that they didn't specifically say, what do you like, to the neighbors, like, oh, do you have a crush on Wally? Why are you doing all this stuff? Which is something that can be revealed later or not or whatever. Like that's about it. Like, really, in a lot of ways, to me, this comic does kind of harken back to the 90s. Like 90s indie stuff that I was looking at, both in the even the plot and the pacing and everything. And it just made me feel, in a lot of ways, even though there is some different stuff in here, like I'd seen this before. Everything about it felt familiar and not necessarily in a good way. Everything, it's like here's a slacker with a magical sidekick who has these like kind of like slacker adventures. I just, it's like every little bit of this I've gotten from somewhere else, and I know that that's literally every story we ever read, but there's just something about maybe the format being black and white that just like really just recalls that right away to like everything that was like happening in the like early 90s indie scene.
Matthew, what turns you off on this book, or what don't you like?
I think part of it is the tone of the sexual issues, and there's some things involving the female characters and the way that they're portrayed that is just kind of like, I don't know. Sometimes you read something and you feel like, okay, this is clearly a man writing a woman, but he's trying to do it in a way that is thoughtful. And then there are times when it's clearly a man writing a woman, and it's like, what do I really want to see a girl do? I want to see her high in her underpants falling off a couch. Okay. And I don't know. There's just something about that part of it that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know. I'm really actually happy with the fact that it wasn't just a normal guy. There's no real explanation of the hows and whys of spirit beavers.
Yeah.
But that's kind of neat. That's kind of cool. That builds to this weird mystique.
There's a lot here, but it's like almost nothing is really followed through. Like an example is the girl's backstory. Like she has, like you see her when she's a little girl, and she's wearing a beaver mask.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, is that a thing? Are we gonna? And maybe this is something that's gonna be explored later because it does kind of have a little bit of a cliffhanger-ish ending. But there's just kind of this stuff that isn't necessarily it's not followed through with, or it's not given enough, right? It's like, are there other spirit people? Clearly, nobody reacts weirdly to the beaver other than to make jokes. So this is not, people aren't like, what, a talking animal. So there must be other ones, or there must be similarly crazy things happening in this world, but we do not see anything else other than the main plot, which the characters are thrown off by. So it must be too weird to be a normal thing that's happening in this world.
I was looking on the Facebook page for Wally Fresh by Lang's page. Looks like there is a 0 issue out there that you can get as part of a Kickstarter campaign. And you'll get a print copy of that, plus the 4 issues in the PDF. Now, this I'm sure is over by now. I was just reading on the page. Plus, you'll also get access to issue 5. So, looks like we're getting some kind of an origin story in 0, and then some continuing adventures in 5.
I might want to see an origin story just because it's not necessarily a question of underdeveloped. It's weirdly developed, and it's something that it feels like the story is taking for granted that I should know more than I do, which makes me wonder if maybe that 0 issue isn't kind of key to getting into this. And
maybe.
again,
I don't know.
And it's like issue 1 starts up and is like, here's a beaver and weird stuff is happening. And it's like, okay, all right, yeah, sure. In media res, man, let's roll with it. But then 5 issues later, we don't get anything else about that, right? It's like, it's just more like a little bit more mystery here and there. And it's like somebody has to say something. Somebody has to turn around and like explain it a little bit, or explain why the world is different, or just that the world is different.
Yeah. Bottom line for me is, I think this might be fun to check out if it were available in a digital version, and it might be. I would say just, check it out. But don't go in expecting, the greatest tale in the world. Expect some fun and crazy adventures, but it's not going to be, a mind-altering experience for you. If you can't check it out in a digital format, I say see if your local library would get it, but it may be out of their ability to acquire. And just because of, I'm sure they would want to put it in a kids section, and then they're going to read it and go, oh no, this can't go in a kids section. So
don't do it.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sure there are some libraries and librarians like Carl who are super cool about finding that kind of stuff. But if you can borrow it or check it out, definitely do that. That's my bottom line. Rodrigo?
There's a lot to like here. I think the art's really good. The character design is strong. And it's wacky, druggy humor, like, I guess. So it's like, there's like a lot of, it's like, again, the fact that it harkens back to like stoner stuff from the 90s and indie stuff from the 90s is not a bad thing. It's just something that made me feel very familiar. So bottom line, if you're into that, if you do like kind of wacky animal sidekicks plus View Askew stuff plus, I think actually, if you liked Harold and Kumar, this might be right up your alley.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
So maybe check that out.
Matthew?
I would agree. And I think that the Harold and Kumar, the not necessarily Bill and Ted, but definitely Wayne and Garth, those type of parallels are there. And that may be why this story feels as familiar as it does. I would recommend this kind of the same way I recommend certain books where it's clear that this is a storyteller with something going on. And it's interesting to see somebody young trying to really work out putting comics on a page. Independent creators don't necessarily get a lot of time to do that. So seeing, the issue and a half that I read or the multiple issues that you guys read and seeing that getting to an audience and him being able to work out all of the bits and pieces of comic book storytelling on a page is fascinating. So I would definitely recommend it on that level. I would say that there are probably going to be some moments in here where you wince a little bit, but it's nothing that really throws the whole thing off balance to turn it into a cringe fest, which is nice. So I would recommend it more as sort of a curiosity is the wrong word, but definitely kind of a
palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Change of pace.
Not necessarily a novelty. A change of pace is exactly the phrase that would work. It's something different, something that's not your standard ranch stash. It's not a rebirth issue. It's not something that's been run through 1,000 focus groups. It's a creator putting his vision on the page, and whether that vision works for you or not, it's always fascinating to see that process.
Yeah, there you go. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being a part of this episode. And that wraps it up for this issue, and thank you for being part of the Major Spoilers experience. Again, if you found some value in this episode, maybe you got a chuckle, maybe you got a laugh, maybe you learned something, maybe you learned a thing or two, head over to patreon.com/majorspoiler, show your appreciation and your thanks, and allow the show to continue far, far, far into the future. We're going to be back next week. I think next week is a mailbag episode. Everybody's been wanting one of those from what I hear on the Twitter. So next week, mailbag, get your questions in, podcast@majorspoilers.com. We'll talk comic books and other things. Why? Because we know that you love comics, and we do too. We will talk with you soon.
Stop talking about comic books or I'll kill you. I don't care if the Hulk could defeat the Man of Steel. I'm gonna rearrange your face if you continue to debate whether Logan's claws could pierce Steve Rogers' shield. I just couldn't care less if they bring back Kraven. Spider-Man's a clone. Stop spending all our cash on back issues of The Flash, or I swear to God you're gonna spend your 21 years alone.
This podcast is copyright 2016 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.